Hi, I'm Jim Shaw, publisher of the Lexington Times and chairman of the board of LexMedia. I'm here with Lynn Jensen, who's been a 19-year resident of Lexington and running for the second time for, I should say, you're running for the first time officially on the ballot.
Yes.
We were talking before the program started that you did run last time. It was a last-minute decision with a write-in campaign, and you came very close to winning. Which is an extraordinary feat, and we may talk about that a little later. But so this is your second shot at trying to get on. But I think you're approaching this very differently as a real sort of retail campaign out there, meeting voters for the duration of the election, not just the last weekend. So so far, how's it going? Is it?
It's very challenging. I found out. To unseat, historically, to unseat incumbents is always difficult, and people, I think, intend to vote the same people already on the seat. But on the other hand, I think it's extremely rewarding because I learned so much during the campaign by meeting people, hearing their concerns, and hearing their hopes for our town, and especially hearing their love for our town. I'm really humbled.
I find that too. I think people are passionate about being in Lexington for a lot of reasons, and not the least of which is the diversity in this community. I grew up here, and I absolutely celebrate the changes that are happening in Lexington. Over the last 30 years, like Cal. People talk about Cal like it's a new organization. They've been here 40 years.
Wow,
They're celebrating their 40th anniversary this year. So, it's kind of redundant, but why are you running? I mean, you ran last time, and I keep saying that. I want to correct myself because it was a last-minute decision, so you really didn't have the benefit of a full campaign. If you did, you might have actually won. I'm so impressed with the idea that you decided the weekend before the election to mount a writing campaign, and you did as well as you did, because that speaks to a couple of different things, that people like you, and that they have concerns about whoever at the time, and I don't know who it was, the incumbency, people getting complacent, and I know there were a lot of concerns about the planning board in the past. So why did you decide I'm going to run again this year?
I'm running because I think we can do better on the planning board. There are opportunities that we can improve. The planning board plays a very important role in our town, and they make decisions that would affect our town in short term, and especially a long time. So I think to work on the planning board, it's important that every board member do their homework, do their independent due diligence research, and listen to the residents truly, and value transparency. I think transparency is important. We can do so much better than communicating to our residents through meeting the legal requirement of notification. And people are busy. People are trying to make a living, and people are working high-pressure jobs. So I think it's our job to communicate in a user-friendly way and really do outreach on our decisions. And transparency, for me, is important because that would help our town to make better decisions. It's not about we're having the same goal. We all agree on the goals where we're going, but how we get there better is so important.
It is important.
Yeah, when we have the proper feedback from our residents, and we're transparent with our communication, and we can work together better to reach that goal.
So, we have, I know last town meeting, Article 33 and 34, and sometimes, and I'm among them, confuse the difference between the special permit, the SRD, versus the village overlays. They were both somewhat controversial going to town meeting, but they passed pretty much overwhelmingly, as far as I can remember. Did they both? I think they needed a 3/4 or 2/3 vote or something like that when you're dealing with zoning matters in town meeting. So, but at any rate, there are some concerns in terms of, density building. I'm hearing one of the first developments coming out of the gate under the new SRD is up in Merriam Hill. And some of the neighbors up there that may have voted for this probably weren't realizing that this really meant everywhere in Lexington. So what are your thoughts about that when people start to think, oh my God, this is really coming to my backyard, and now they're all of a sudden concerned? The other thing too is I know that they've got an article in the town meeting warrant that'll help that sort of close some loopholes and other things on some of the decisions that were made last year. So I'm throwing a little bit at you, so if you can sort of sort that out and talk a little bit about that.
I will try to make a few points so that I don't forget. One is that we have a new state law that for any multifamily zoning articles, we only need half to approve. So no longer the 2/3 zoning requirement. So we only needed 51% of the votes from the town meeting to approve.
Okay, thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, but to roll back anything, to make adjustments so that is viewed, if it's viewed as more restrictive, then we need 2/3 votes.
I see.
So basically it's much easier to pass and then much harder to adjust. So that was one of the reasons why that was so controversial, because there was no reason we rushed to a year and a half ahead of the deadline for Article 34. And so we could have taken the time to really fine-tune the language, to have the bylaw to promote multifamily, but also leave some acreage for our town to have a Lexington-style MBTA zoning districts, where we can really require the size of the units so that they're actually more attainable, smaller, more attainable, more affordable. And also we could have a better setbacks so that they're not 7 feet from the house behind and not 0 feet against the sidewalk. So I think all these finer details could have benefit from more time.
Right.
And the two articles were proposed, like you said, a lot of people didn't understand very well. And I think I made a last-minute effort on my personal website, try to explain what the implications are.
Right.
I think it's time that we have a very honest conversation with our community, why we need to add density. There's a lot of data there. We don't have to say that if they oppose it is because they're NIMBY. They oppose it because maybe they're not informed.
Right.
And then once we inform people, we spend the time to explain to people, and then we say this is a smart way to do it, and how we keep the trees as much as we can, and plan it in a way that we have new denser neighborhood, but at the same time be very conscientious about the footprint and the size of the buildings.
Making more efficient use of the footprint.
Absolutely. So I think that was the point. I think when we do not have when we have more transparency and better communication, we can work better and result in better proposals.
Yeah, and the fundamental difference, one of the fundamental differences with the SRD versus the village overlays is that there are 5 village overlays, so not every part of the Lexington falls into that MBTA village overlay category, but the SRD is the entire community.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you pointed out, I remember a time when you needed 15 feet between your structure and the neighbor's property line, so giving you essentially at least 30 feet in the worst case scenario between structures. Now we're talking 7 feet, and then, like you said, on sidewalks it's 0, and which speaks to pretty much the center business district. Yeah.
So 0 is if you have your front facade is more than 50% is commercial.
Right.
You're allowed to do 0. So I think we are facing a challenge, not alone, but it's throughout metropolitan area in Boston to East Coast altogether. Right. So the population that gravitated towards certain regions of the country, I think it's very normal. We would have to add some density, but this is a time that we learn and do research, see what other communities are doing, what successful stories that they are, what can we learn from them, and maximizing square footage is one way, but to what extent, and then to still keep the neighborhood welcoming, inclusive, and also sustainable.
Right. So there's currently a situation in Lexington Center as a direct result of the village, the overlay, and the Center Business District being within that overlay. There's a landlord and a tenant. A tenant is a very popular retail establishment. I'm not going to name names, but I think you know what I'm talking about, and most people will hear about it eventually. But the landlord has offered them a 2-year lease, which basically says they have, their future is pretty dim. Even though the whole idea is, they'll go out, they'll be displaced, whether or not they can find another place in Lexington Center or move back. The whole idea is, to hopefully offer them an opportunity to come back into that space, because it will require retail space. Yeah. It's got to be a retail mix, a retail residential mix, but still, businesses could potentially be displaced, and this is something that we're actually looking down at right now. It's really, they're discussing this now. It's been an issue. It's a direct result of this. So what do you say when longtime businesses are all of a sudden put in jeopardy? I mean, I understand the need for housing and the balanced approach, but do you think there's ways to make special accommodations for businesses that are long-term, or what? I mean, I guess I'm not saying we should favor one business over the other, because we do need a standard policy, but what do you say to that? Because that will come up in discussion. You're going to see it on the Mavens. You're going to see it on other things. Yeah. So what do you say to that? Yeah,
I think it's very challenging that when you rezone something, and even though you require the first floor to be commercial, or even you encourage in the center is required, the first floor will be commercial. Some other districts are encouraged. If your first floor is a certain percentage is commercial, then you can build taller buildings, one level more. So for the center's case, the first floor would still be commercial, but I understand it's very frustrating during the construction. The business may be displaced. So I think if I'm elected, I would work closely with other committees, the town center committee and business council, and all the groups to figure out the way how we encourage a business to stay, either to relocate them in a different location when it's under construction, or other ways. And I think one thing I really liked to repeat is a high school retired, now he's retired, Mr. Olsen, math teacher. He said something I really like to repeat, is that anything worth doing is done by a team, by a community. So I think whatever decision we make, we have to work together. And that's my experience of 19 years of volunteering in town. And we make so many positive changes on bylaws and policies on waste reduction, zoning, and clean heat. It's all a collaboration with different talents in town and town staff. I think that is something that we have to work together. And I do hear that also a lot of property owners are approached by businesses for opportunities to grow, to build taller and add housing. So I think that's one of the challenges. Hopefully it's short term, but it's still worth working at. Yeah.
Right. But you said something about going up one floor. Doesn't it? You may correct me. In the center, it would be they could go up 5 stories, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So the center is 5 stories. I think for other districts would be.
It's okay.
Don't quote me. Either 4 or 5 stories if it's completely residential.
Right.
But if it's adding the first floor commercial,
right.
Not even 100%, maybe whatever percentage, depend on the zoning, the district, it would be 6 stories.
Right. And that center zoning is not factored into the overall number. because of the
requirements.
Right, exactly.
The other districts are encouraged, give a bonus, high bonus.
Right.
This is another reason that we were hoping that we can do a Lexington style and BTA zoning, multifamily zoning, where we can really fine tune what we really want to really yield the result we want.
Right. And this is a mandate from the state. It's not a suggestion, which, some people say, well, why are we having to do this? Well, apparently Milton decided they weren't going to do it, and now they're going to pay a serious price for it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a mandate, but not for 227 acres. The mandate is 50 acres.
Right.
So what a lot of the town meeting members were hoping that we could have done 50 or 80 acres or 100 to satisfy the mandate, but use the rest acreage, which are identified as on the MBTA routes and as good candidates for multifamily. We have those districts have a Lexington style multifamily district, where we can really mandate what we want, what the town needs. I think we lost that flexibility and that opportunity by having 227 acres under the same mandate.
Right. Yeah, that is quite a bit of land. Let's talk a little. I got a couple of things I want to ask you. Let's talk a little bit about your background. I was really impressed with your, with your educational background. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And how you think that plays into it. Your experience, your knowledge in the community, your volunteerism, your activism. So tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, thank you. I was born and raised in Beijing, China. I got my undergrad degree in Peking University. I had to brag a little bit. It's like a Harvard in China. I was very lucky. I got an MBA from Columbia Business School. I worked in corporate finance at Honeywell International, first in their global headquarters in New Jersey, then in their European headquarters in Germany. And I have lived in Lexington for 19 years, and I have volunteered in Lexington for 19 years. First, through of course, the PTOs. I was a room parent. I was editor for newsletters. I was a host for our family, host for Medco Family Friend, and I was also the PTO co-president. I'm also co-founded LPS Green Teams. So a group of volunteers and teachers, we collaborate and help all 9 schools to help the students to reduce their waste during lunchtime and sort their waste, compost in the compost bin, plastic bottles in the recycle bin. That reduced our waste by 80% during lunchtime. It was a hugely successful program. We are still running it continuously every school day. I'm also volunteer for Sustainable Clean Heat Lexington Alliance to push a positive change in bylaw on clean heat in our town. And I'm also a member of Sustainable Lexington, town meeting member for Precinct 8. I think my skills are analytical and data-driven. I think a lot of it was honed through working in a corporate environment, working with tax, legal, business planning, accounting groups across the globe. I think that helped me to build that skill set. And also having lived on 3 continents across the world also gave me the first-hand lived experience of living in different housing types and housing approaches.
A global perspective, in other words.
Yes, yeah. So I think that could be valuable in when we make decisions. We make long-term decisions that will benefit for us now, but also for the future generations. I think some of the long-term decisions are easier to make and others are harder. So that's why it's rely on the planning board to take the leadership to educate, to communicate to our residents. And our residents, I have to be, maybe I'm biased, you couldn't find more educated constituents in the whole wide world. This most educated town.
Not to mention the number of Nobel laureates that live here.
I heard it's 11. So
I don't know if it's quite 11, but it's high.
If you count who have lived here but not winning when they were living here, I heard it's 11.
2 Lexington students, graduates, 2 years in a row won the Nobel Prize.
Wow.
This is just the most recent prize and in the last year's prize. They were both LHS graduates.
Yeah.
Which it makes me very proud.
Yeah, me too. So I think, I think people are very ready to learn new ideas. I'm proud of that. I think when we make decisions for the long term with short term implications, I think it's our job to explain with data and facts.
And in your response or your statement in the Lexington Times, you talk about, you talked about a neighboring community's mission statement. And you included it in your statement because you really felt important. You felt it was important enough to say, to emulate. So we only have another minute or so. So I wanted to just sort of close out on that's obviously if we're, we would look at that and say, use that as a guide. This is the way we could approach things maybe a little differently. Would you agree? I mean, I don't want you to say what town it is because then we might get a complex, set up a long-term rivalry, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's some value in looking around what other communities are doing to solve problems and address issues.
Yeah, we're never alone in this. That's the lesson I have learned through my life living in different places. We're never alone with our problems, and I think we have a lot to learn from neighboring communities to help solve our housing crisis and climate crisis. And I done a lot of grassroots programs, and also I worked on bylaw and policy changes. I Google a lot, and when I Google, I am floored about the success and the beautiful work other people have done. And I ask their permission to use their language or use their ideas. And I think, I also, as Green Team member and Clean Heat Alliance, other communities have reached out to us and asked our experience.
We've been a leader on that.
Yeah, on that too. So people, as far as taxes, have called us, and then we have Zoom. We shared our experience, and we also went to visit other towns to share our experience. And which is funny because once we were there, actually we have learned so much from them too, because they're doing something better than us. So I felt like it's always a learning experience. I think it's
it should be.
Yes, yeah. It's learning from each other.
Right. Well, I want to thank you very much. I wish we had more time. We have so many interviews that we need to do for the course of this election. It's great that people are coming out and running. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Now, if people want to learn more about you, I know you have a website. What is your website?
The website is www. That has to be there. Sorry. .linjensen.org.
And it's Jensen.
Yeah, SEN, not SON.
Right.
Lin is LIN, and one word, linjensen.org.
Great. Well, I encourage folks to take the time to visit and learn more about Lynn and her positions. I know you did very well last time with a 3-day effort, so hopefully you'll meet with some success. So
thank you.
I appreciate you having you here today, and I do appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much for having me today.
We're happy to do it.
Yeah, thank you.
You.